but to say that curbside checking of luggage is no longer acceptable when it wouldn't have prevented anything is, in my opinion, insane.
That's right.
Mary, if you agree with that, are we reopening the airports too soon?
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with Art so much. I mean, we have talked about this before, and Larry, you have talked about this before. We are doing a lot of things because the FAA wants to show that things are back to normal. That is the worst thing that the FAA could do. That is exactly what the terrorists want us to do. We should never even consider going back to normal. And what did the FAA do today? They have made ridiculous pronouncements. At first they said they were going to open at noon. Then they left each airport to decide when they had done their sweeps. Then they made ridiculous pronouncements like no more steak knives on planes. And then they did things like curbside checking instead of what they should have been doing, which is formulating a national strategy to combat this. And I think they have positively shown today they cannot do it. Airport and aviation security is a law enforcement function. It belongs with a law enforcement agency, not the FAA.
Even if that means, Michael, just tying up airports and no traffic and people not able to fly, take a train, take a car, no business travel, I mean, the economy would stand still.
Right. I don't agree with draconian results, but what I do think is that whatever we do can't be for a week or a month or a year. It has to be forever. So we have to think these things out. A report this morning said the Seattle-Tacoma Airport is going to have no carry-on baggage, including purses. Now, what's going to happen to my blood pressure medicine? Am I going to have to put that in a suitcase and then lose the suitcase and then try to get my medicine wherever I'm going? So they got to think about this for a while.
You agree with marshals on every plane?
Yes, and I think we need to. In the report of the Gore Commission, they wanted marshals. They wanted $160 million worth of new equipment and $5 million to train new personnel. They ran out of money for marshals. The people who check you through security are nearly minimum wage, lowly trained, and they're the ones responsible for our safety.
Arthur, was the argument against it cost?
Yes. Of course. I mean, that's always the argument. That's why these things don't get accomplished. We had marshals on aircraft for many years, and they were flown randomly on flights. Well, obviously, because the threat is so much increased, we can't do it randomly. We have to have them on every flight. You know, one of the things that struck me about the program tonight, Larry, were the people in Washington saying that they have oversight responsibility. Well, let me say this to them, that oversight responsibility does not mean overlook. It means look over.
That's right.
And that's the problem that we have in Washington. Oversight to them means overlook.
And is that because, Mary, basically we're a society that's just not used to this, and it's easy to get complacent? Things go along pretty well, we stop doing the checks. We play the people. How much do these people get at the check-in gates?
Well, it is because in some ways we are complacent, but it's also told that we were told to be complacent. The federal government, I have been in meetings in the Department of Transportation where literally officials with the FAA said, look, we need to give the impression of security, but we can't possibly make airports and aircraft safe. If we did, it would cost $10 billion. And the reason they said that was, it was actually trifold. One, they said because domestic aviation was not targeted, they rated the threat as very low, instead of realizing that because we're not doing anything about it, it's actually very high. Simply because it hasn't been carried out in the past does not mean it doesn't exist. Two, they said the airlines don't want to pay for the security measures and passengers would not want raised fares. And three, there were actually objections from certain labor unions and workforce groups about having additional security. They did not want full background checks. They complained about having convictions knock you out of employment, and they didn't want that. And in the end, they blamed it on the passengers. They said the passengers won't put up with delays.
Let's take a call. Fort Dodge, Iowa, for our panel. Hello.
Yeah, why don't you just seal the bulkhead between the passenger and pilot compartment with no possible entry through it either direction once the plane's in flight, and have no communication between the two except through the ground?
Michael?
Well, I don't think you need to seal it permanently, but what you need to do is get the door in there that is a strong security door. Right now we have a door that stops somebody from going in the cockpit if they want to go to the bathroom.
But what if then, Michael, if a hostage taker just said, "Open the door, I'm going to start killing people"?
Then you have to have trained for that and made the decision on whether or not that is going to be followed, or the risk of another World Trade Center is greater than the loss of some members of the crew or passengers. It's a hard choice. It's the same hard choice you would give a fighter pilot to shoot down an airliner if it's heading for Washington Central.
And that's what you would do, right?
If they told me to, yes, I would.
You would shoot down an airliner with people on it?
Yes, I would. If they were heading for a building that 10,000 people in it, yes.
Arthur Walk, would your marshals be armed?
Oh, of course. And they were armed before. They had guns that were designed so that they wouldn't penetrate the airplane structure, and that's what they need to have. But you have to remember, Larry, that one of the things that strikes me is that if you stop terrorism where you're supposed to, which is before it gets to the airport, you don't have to worry about the sky marshals having to exercise their authority. But the bottom line is, now we know, as we have for the last 20 years or so, that we need sky marshals, and now we need to come up with the money for it. And I'll be the first one to send my $300 tax refund back so they can apply it to that purpose.
So just so we get the record straight, Arthur, you would favor, until major steps are taken, keeping these airports closed?
No. I believe that we have to implement sky marshals immediately. And if that requires marshals that come from the United States Marshal Service immediately.
If they don't do it immediately, you wouldn't open them till they do it.
I think that we have to be very, very careful. We certainly have to put sky marshals on randomly at the beginning and then gradually increase it so they're on every flight.
Yeah. I thank you all very much. We expect to hear a lot more from you, Michael and Arthur and Mary Schiavo. We'll conclude our program with a visit with Dr. James Dobson with Rabbi Harold Kushner and Father Michael Manning and get their perspective. Tonight at the Capitol, a prayer vigil. Listen and watch.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.
Joining us now from Colorado Springs is Dr. James Dobson, president of Focus on the Family and author of a new book, When God Doesn't Make Sense. That title would well apply to events yesterday. In Boston is Rabbi Harold Kushner. He's written many books, his most famous one, of course, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, and also the new one, Living a Life That Matters. And here in Los Angeles, Father Michael Manning, Roman Catholic priest and host of his own television show, The Word in the World. Dr. Dobson, we could well ask, did God make any sense yesterday?
Well, Larry, it's certain that this situation is very difficult to understand, and there are no easy answers for it. And people who think they have it figured out just haven't lived long enough, I think. There are circumstances in our lives, and I try to write about that, when the pieces just don't fit. And we believe that our obligation in moments like that is to go on trusting and depending on the Lord and looking to Him for solace, and millions have done that.
Rabbi Kushner, why did bad things happen to so many good people yesterday?
Because human beings are free to decide if they want to do good things or bad things. And some of those human beings are so filled with rage that they go crazy and hurt other people in the process. I don't think it was God pulling the strings. You know where I found God yesterday, Larry? In those firemen and policemen who were willing to risk their lives to try and save other lives. In the people who lined up for hours to give blood. That's what God was doing. God wasn't making planes crash.
An all-powerful God, though, Father, could have prevented it, couldn't He?
Well, He could have prevented it, but the reality is He loves us too much to allow us to take away our freedom. He believes in us, and He believes...
He loved all those people who went and smashing into that building.
Oh, yes, but he believes that there's a battle for evil. I see this as a battle. I see it as a big battle, and as a Christian...
Evil won yesterday?
They gave a good blow, but I certainly don't think that we're down. I think that we're in a battle with evil, and we got to fight it. That's the Our Father. Deliver us from evil, and we've got to fight continually for that.
Dr. Dobson, how do we deal with the anger we have?
Well, Larry, let me first say that I agree with what the other two gentlemen just said. We can't blame this on God. I don't believe that He did it, and He has given us a free will. And if He had not given us that, we would be nothing but puppets on a string. And so people do evil things, and evil people do terrible things like we've seen here. As far as grief is concerned, this is a horrible experience for the nation, and we're not going to get over it easily. It's going to take time, and we are going to have an opportunity to think through what's happened to us and let our emotions heal. But ultimately, I believe that we turn for solace to God, who has been there with us through our crises in the past. Americans are very resilient. They have many resources, and two of the greatest are their families and their faith, and I believe that's where we'll turn this time.
Rabbi Kushner, what is your thoughts on the obvious anger people have today toward people whose nationality is different from theirs, or people from a certain region, or the desire to just strike back tomorrow?
Larry, I would hope that we'd be able to do something better with our anger than do what those crazed hijackers did yesterday and try and hurt people because they don't like them, disagree with their politics, or find themselves members of a different faith. If we do anything like that, we lower ourselves to their level. And I would hope that there's a more honorable way of paying tribute to the people whose lives were taken yesterday. Larry, you realize all over this country, rabbis are throwing out their high holiday sermons and writing new ones because of what happened yesterday. I spoke to a colleague yesterday about what there is to say about this, and I was impressed by what he said. He said, now we are all Israelis. That is, we have learned what the Israelis have had to live with for 53 years, the sense of vulnerability and the determination to go on living your normal lives and not let the bad guys take over the field.
What do you say to children, Father Manning, who point to the screen and say, why did they do that?
Why did they do that? Because I believe that the battle was not fought in the right way. It's a battle of continually trying to find out where there's injustice and working as hard as we can to overcome that. But at the same time, we have to face the fact that there is evil in the world, and we talk about grief, we talk about the real necessity of talking to those kids and letting them, making sure that we listen to them and we hear them, but we give them a deep reflection of faith and understanding that there's something more powerful and good than all the evil that comes. We got to fight it.
That's good. That's tough convincing, isn't it, Dr. Dobson?
It certainly is, but I think it's very important for parents to know that the security and sense of well-being of their children is rooted in their relationship with their parents. And if they see their parents in anguish, if they see them expressing too much grief, if they allow them to see videos of this horrible experience and they perceive it as an ongoing crisis, then the children are going to suffer. And I think it's very important for us to keep them talking and to let them know that we're not frightened. And at that point, again, I point us back to prayer. And you can teach children to pray and ask them to, or teach them to pray for the people who are hurting and those who are in the hospital, for the firemen and the others, and certainly for the president. And I think you can help them gradually learn to deal with this.
Rabbi, with something like this, are there moments where you doubt your faith?
No, it's moments when I call on my faith, because where else do I get the courage to get on an airplane next week, to go shopping next week, to invite my family to come up for the High Holy Days with us? If I didn't have that faith that ultimately the world rewards goodness, I don't think I could go on in the face of cruelty like what we experienced yesterday.
And one of the weird things in dealing with the faith, Father, is that these people were probably religious fanatics, right?
They were thinking that God was calling.
So they had a faith.
Yes, they had a faith in God. And this is, as a Catholic, I know that we can have an experience of looking back to the Inquisition and looking at things like the Crusades and saying, we missed the boat. But I think we've got to say, well, let's learn. Let's make sure that as followers of God, we're not allowing a God of over-judgment to lose the God of patience and kindness and love for us.
We thank all of our guests for being with us tonight. These are very, very, very difficult times, and at CNN we are trying to do the best to cover it as best we can, bringing you all angles with the full understanding that we are being seen all around the world and that the world shares in our grief. Coming up next is a CNN special report. It'll be co-anchored by Aaron Brown and the newest member of our CNN team who was with us earlier tonight, Paul Lazan. Aaron and Paula are next. As we leave you with that hole in the ground in New York. And we'll see you tomorrow night. I'm Larry King.